Welcome to Moon Memos, Episode 2. I'm your host, Moon Qing, and I'd like to share some stories about horses today. Growing up in big cities, I never really had much encounter with horses. The earliest I can remember is sometime in the 90s, early 2000s. I was in Arizona and my boyfriend at the time and I were on a trail and we hired two horses. My horse at one point got very close to his, and there didn't seem like there was enough room to accommodate my leg, but my horse just walked ahead anyway. And it really felt like my leg, the one that was caught between the two horses, was going to flatten and explode like a water balloon. It didn't, but I will never forget thinking how powerful this beast is. In 2009, when I started grad school for Chinese medicine, I became more interested in topics like healing and spirituality. And I remember reading things that seemed incredible about horses. They're considered very spiritual animals, and there was a ranch, a farm somewhere. Someone who is ill can go and they'd have that person lie down on a massage table placed outside where the horses are. And the horse would, without prompt, without being told to or instructed to, would automatically come over and hover over that person. Many people who went through this process said they experienced profound changes and shifts. I couldn't really grasp the idea at the time. Then one of my teachers, I think it was anatomy class, he was a chiropractor, and he told a story about how he started to prefer working on horses as opposed to people because people were difficult, but horses were extremely, extremely responsive. He said that whenever he seemed to hit the right spot on their spine, the whole body would respond and relax and sort of fall into place. And that gave him so much more satisfaction. Fast forward many years later, when I bought my house in upstate New York in the Catskills, that's when I became closer to horses. My neighbor across the creek had four horses. At one point, when he was going away, he asked me to take care of them. I think I actually volunteered because I wanted to experience what it was like and to exchange for some horse poop as fertilizer for my garden. So I went over there to have him show me what to do. The first thing was to let him out from the barn where they have individual stalls, and he showed me how to do that with a rope. First, I opened the door and I put the rope around the horse's neck and I walk them out into the enclosed area outside. And there were three of them. One was very large, but he was the friendliest. And actually, the smallest one was the least friendly. He wasn't broke and he was very skeptical of any strangers. I heard from them that when they bought him, he was drugged, so he appeared to be really docile. But then they found out, of course, after the drug wore off, that he was actually not very broke, as they say. So anyway, I learned this part, and then my neighbor was standing behind the horse when he started to go back towards the barn, because next step was to show me how to put their feed into their each individual stalls and then how to clean it out. So he started to walk towards the barn and I started to follow him. So the largest horse, Buddy, was between us. And there was a lot to take in, so I wasn't even really paying attention to the horse, but Buddy was paying close attention to me because he saw me go towards the barn following his human, and he made a very slight move to my right, which is a little bit backwards for him. And I did see this somehow, that it was only a very, very, very slight movement on his part, like one leg a couple of inches back. But that was enough to block my way. So at this point, I wasn't aware of what he was doing. So I'm about 10 feet, maybe 10 feet in front of Buddy. So then I, of course, changed my course and kind of turned toward my left to go around him towards the barn. And he immediately moved the other way a little bit forward. So, I mean, just like barely an inch, but just enough to block me from going in that direction. So, this large animal is so sensitive and precise. And it was playing with me. It was trying to block me. The following weekend, when it was time for me to actually do my job and take them out, feed them, clean their stalls, put hay in the field for them, and then at the end of the day come back to let them back in. It was February and it was extremely cold that weekend. So cold the ground was frozen solid. So when I was wheeling the hay out into the field, it tipped over. My wheelbarrow tipped over because the ground was really uneven and it was frozen solid. So my little wheel got caught and tipped over. Things were not easy, but I was happy. And when I was taking them out, Buddy again was totally playing me. He didn't treat me like a leader, and he broke off from his rope. I mean, it's just a rope around his neck. It's more, to me, it seemed more symbolic because it's not physically, I cannot physically restrain them. But he broke free and he ran away from the field. Couldn't really will him back. Instead of panicking, I decided, okay, screw it, going for the other two. And the other two horses were more obedient and they went into their field. And finally, Buddy just kind of ran back when he saw that I was putting food into the barn. So Buddy was the most friendly and most playful, even though he gave me the most problems. But I always wanted to win over the one named Cowboy. He is just a beautiful creature. He's brown and white, creamy white colored, and he's smaller. I think that's the Arabian breed, but he's smaller and just a beautiful creature. But he would never warm up to me, no matter what I tried. Even when I used treats, Buddy was always very ready to come over. But Cowboy didn't care about that. I couldn't bribe him with food. Whenever I had the chance, I tried, but it never worked. He just always remained far away, aloof, and looked at me with what I perceived as very skeptical eyes. Fast forward to March of 2024. My neighbors asked again for some help. This time it was to take care of their chickens, and I went over each morning to let them out and each evening to put them back in. I was in a very low and dark place in my life. Some mornings it was a pleasure to have this reason to go outside, be in the sun, and be over there. Some mornings it was extremely hard to drag myself over. I didn't see a point to my life. I was very hopeless and helpless, and I couldn't figure out a way to change my external situation. And one morning, after I had put the chickens out and finished whatever I had to do, I noticed that Cowboy was actually very close to the gate, inside the enclosed area still, but very close to the gate and staring at me, but not with the usual skepticism, but he was just looking at me. And it was very surprising because, as I told you, he usually stayed far away. So I walked towards him and he didn't run away like he used to. And I got close enough, so I put my hand under his nose. He smelled it a bit and he actually let me pet him. I don't know what came over me at that moment, but tears started streaming down my face. I think that was Cowboy healing me. I don't know what else to call it. And we had that special moment, which lasted quite a while. A lot of tears came out, and I was just really bathing in this gentle but very strong energy of this horse who I used to think didn't like me. And I wonder now, it's still a mystery, and I don't know if I'll ever know, but I wonder if it's because I allowed myself to feel difficult feelings. And since no one else was around, no human, I wasn't putting on a mask. I was just there. And when I felt like I didn't want to be there, I think my body and my energy expressed that. And so in the past, I was trying to lure him. And maybe the insincerity in that, not that I was coming from an insincere place, but I thought I had to be different, somehow contort my energy to attract him. And that's not what attracts him. What he responded to was a person being sad, and he came over and offered his support. So, wow, I don't even have anything else to say other than that. That was a very amazing, extraordinary teaching moment. Fast forward to February 2025, just a couple of weeks ago, I landed in Cairo, Egypt, and immediately from the airport, my husband and I went to Giza. We checked into our hotel room and went to sleep because we were extremely jet lagged. And when we woke up a couple hours later, more refreshed, it was already afternoon. And I think it was around 3. So I inquired with reception about visiting the pyramids. I thought for sure it was too late because I think they closed at 4 or 5. But the reception guy said he knew a great local guide who was available and came over in a couple of minutes. An older man, I found out later, he came from a Bedouin family, and he said actually what we were in perfect time to do was to ride over to a large area behind the pyramids for the sunset. And it sounded great. So we decided to go for it. And he walked us over to where his horses, or the people he worked with who owned the horses. By the time we got to the horses, after walking a couple of minutes, I was completely at ease because crossing the road to get there was a lot scarier. I literally had to hold my guide's hand to cross the street. There were endless traffic who were not stopping for any human. There didn't seem to be any strategy other than gritting your teeth and going for it. So he picked out a horse for me and a horse for my husband, and we were helped onto the horses and we started riding. As he was deciding between which horse was for us, I remember there was some commotion. I heard some voices with some alarm, and I turned around and I saw this young black horse. I couldn't tell what age, but I could tell it was young because it wasn't as big as the other ones, and it wasn't like tiny, but it was maybe only halfway between a very, very small colt and a grown-up adult horse. It didn't have any ropes or any saddle or rein on it, and it was sniffing. It was sniffing the head of my guide. I guess its owners were shouting at it, and later on I asked my guide, who said that it was a 7-month-old horse and it was just kind of playing. And as we rode on, this young horse was literally running circles around everybody. Besides the 4 of us, the guide, the horse guy, my husband, and I, behind us were perhaps some more tourists I didn't ever turn around to look, but um, I am guessing that the young horse's parent was among the group because it followed us, and it was running around, literally circling different horses, and it was going forward, going backward, left and right, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing to witness because this thing was pure joy. It was flipping its mane around, almost seemed like it was showing off its beautiful body. It was so fast and elegant and playful. I felt like I was seeing the most beautiful expression of joy. I don't know how many kilometers we went. It was a while, and I was really happy that this young horse, kept along the whole journey, and it was playing the whole time. There were times when it was running up to a carriage and the humans screamed at it, trying to get it back, and I don't think there was ever one occasion when it listened. It was just doing whatever it wanted, and it was just so much fun to watch. So we finally arrived at an open area. It wasn't quite flat, but it was very open with the pyramids in the distance, and we dismounted. Then my guide did something unexpected. He walked a bit over, drew a large circle in the sand with a stick, looked at me, and said, "You should meditate in here." And without question, I did. I sat in that circle in the sand and meditated while looking at the pyramids in front of me. I remembered that moment with Cowboy. Concerns came up like, are they okay waiting for me? Why am I doing this? Why am I taking up time? But they quickly drifted away, these concerns, because I started to really settle into that same feeling I had when I watched the 7-month-old horse play. This was what I wanted. I wanted to come here and be here. So I allowed those thoughts, those concerns, those very self conscious ideas to drift away. And I started to settle into stillness. And then that young horse ran by in front of me. And this time I was really able to be there and be in that joyous yet harmonious and very, very still place for a long while. So, towards the end, I was told that I sat there for about 20 minutes. Towards the end, I witnessed something that was very disturbing. The horse carriage came by, and there was one woman riding in the back. The woman who had a head covering, so I know she's Islamic, she kind of walked up the hill in a way that made me think she was not okay. And the owner of the carriage got off his seat and started whipping the horse. I was still sitting in my circle, and I was witnessing this. And it was at first very disturbing, the sound, because at this point, when it was very, very close to sunset, everybody quieted down. And I could hear, even though this was about, I don't know, 500, 200 feet away, I could hear the snapping of the whip. And then the horse started making sounds. And I was not able to be in my stillness. I was reacting. But this time, before the whole event ended, I was actually able to bring myself back because it was very clear that there was nothing to do. There was nothing I could do, and there was nothing I should do. Not that I shouldn't help any sentient being in need, but that I realized I couldn't communicate to that person. I don't speak Arabic. Gladly, my guide actually walked over towards them and shouted at him to stop. By this time, that horse actually started running off with the carriage to get away from this man. And I was very relieved. The whole thing stopped happening. But I was also proud that I could witness something difficult, that I had an emotional reaction to, but didn't allow that emotional reaction to lead to action that might not have been good for anybody other than to appease myself, to make it so that I don't have to feel those feelings. And that was only the first couple of hours of being in Egypt. So much has happened during this entire trip. I know it will take a lot more time for me to integrate and be able to tell the stories. But what I understand now is that I am not myself when I think I am somehow an inconvenience to somebody else when I want to do what I want to do. It's funny that I thought that when I was meditating there in front of the pyramids. I mean, that's why I made this trip happen, because I wanted to be there. And yet I allowed this kind of old programming to come up, and it's basically saying that I don't deserve to do what I want. I don't deserve to take up time, to take up space. I hired the guy, paid him to take me there. But that young horse really showed me what it's like to be completely unself-conscious, to be completely unseparated from all of existence, because energetically we really aren't. That really is an illusion. And it showed me what it's like, how much joy and beauty and purity there is when we let go of that illusion and immerse ourselves in that completeness, that whole connection without separation. And what Cowboy showed me is that we are the most magnetic and attractive when we allow ourselves to express what's really happening emotionally, energetically, even if it's coming from a good place. It is still not authentic when we think that we have to somehow change and appear a different way than how we actually feel at the moment. I think that's what Cowboy showed me, is that he knows when I am completely myself, and he knows when I'm trying to be somebody I'm not, in order to please him, to lure him. And looking back, even though these thoughts never really crossed my mind, I was trying to manipulate something. I was trying to manipulate how he related to me in that moment, because I just wanted to be close to him. But it's not sincere. It is not me. I thought I had to be somebody else, and he knew that. And now I remember another beautiful memory from my trip in Morocco. Last year, 2024, I hired a guide who came from Berbers, who were nomads in the desert, and he didn't live nomadically anymore, but he still had connections to nomadic people. We were driving through a very rural town, and there was a lot of activity, and he explained that there was a big market day, and in this particular market there was going to be a horse race or some kind of contest, and there was going to be an auction for horses. And as he was talking, in the front seat of the car, I was looking out the window, and I see this man walking his horse, who was so beautifully made up. They had trimmed his mane to a few inches so that it wasn't flipped over its neck, but it was almost standing up, straight up, perpendicular from its neck. And it was so clean and brushed, and it was black. It was so black, yet it was glowing in this indescribable purplish black light. And the way it walked down that road with its owner, the way it walked down that road was just pure pride. It was radiating in its own beauty. It was like this horse knew how gorgeous it was. And I, to this day, will regret not asking to stop to be in that market for a little while to see more of what goes on, because that was another special moment. And I learned my lesson though. What I want is not a burden to anybody else. What I want is not taking up too much space or time or whatever. I wouldn't be given these desires if I wasn't meant to have them. I don't desire anything that harms anybody else. I don't desire anything that takes away from somebody else. What I usually desire is just to participate in the beauty and the glory of being alive on this planet. So, yeah. The idea I'm trying to convey is that we wouldn't be given desires if they weren't meant to play out. And if it wasn't meant to happen, believe me, the universe won't let it. What is usually in the way of these things playing out is that we actually place obstacles in the flow of life because of things we picked up as children, because of these lessons we learned to cope with circumstances that may have worked at the time, but no longer works to serve us. So the work is actually to reveal what's underneath all these things that aren't ours, that aren't our authentic self. As my awareness grows around this idea, I am seeing more and more signs of how life shows me where I place obstacles in the way of my own life's flow. And so the work is to become aware and practice not doing it. It's a lot about taking away, allowing, and revealing what's actually always been there instead of doing more. If you want to get an even more clear idea of what I was talking about with the 7-month-old horse, I imagine it's probably the same thing to watch a child play or to let yourself play. In the modern society, we are not outside enough. We are not under the sun enough. We don't play enough. And that causes dis-ease because our energy is not flowing. Our chi is not flowing. We're not breathing when we're not doing those things. So I will conclude by wishing you more time outside, more time in sunlight, and more time playing and being yourself. Pure joy. Until next time.